Hey guys, Dan here with Battlefield Curator, and I'm going to give you a little update on the Ukraine and Russia crisis. This conflict has been ongoing throughout the weekend, and it appears that Ukrainian forces and civilians and mercenaries have been able to hold off Russian forces with trying to attack the capital city of Kyiv and some other major areas of importance. So this is actually a pretty big morale victory for the Ukrainians. They were not expected to do as well in this defense. Russian forces have been hurt pretty bad. Right now there's a 40-mile long convoy of Russian vehicles, tanks, artillery, ready to attack and strike at Kyiv. So we will see what happens as this goes on. Right now Russia apparently doesn't have great air superiority, so the Ukrainians are definitely winning air battles and putting a stop to Russians from advancing. So this is looking like another large-scale attack on Kyiv. Countries are also coming together and banning imports and exports to and from Russia. Even Turkey came out and said, hey, we're not going to let military forces cross through Turkish waters. So there's a lot of other sanctions that are being imposed by countries around the globe. And this has caused the Russian ruble to drop in value over 20%. A lot of Russian civilians are trying to go out and get some cash out so they can store it and you know, just hold on to it instead of being in banks and being frozen or losing money or you know, just trying to survive and do something. But yeah, this is having a devastating effect on the Russian banking system and the civilian populace as far as money goes. Now, this is because countries are banning the Russian banks from accessing the SWIFT banking system. Other countries that, you know, may have been on Russia's side before are taking the side of Ukraine. So now we're having kind of like a world kind of picking sides, like a lot of these countries picking sides. What side am I gonna ally myself to? Russia's huge, Ukraine is pretty big, you know, and a lot of countries are, you know, trying to make that decision, you know, looking at what Putin is trying to do. What's he trying to accomplish here? Is Putin being greedy? Some countries might say, hey, Putin's being a little greedy here. He's trying to probably expand his Russian empire and take over Ukraine, where he can get a lot of strategic material goods, a lot of different assets, a lot of financial assets, a lot of you know, different technological assets. He's trying to grow his empire. And as far as other countries go, they are sending military assets like tanks, vehicles, anti-tank, anti-aircraft weapons, small arms, ammunition. They're all sending a lot of stuff to Ukraine to support Ukraine's fight against Russia. There are even countries that are saying, hey, you want to go fight in Ukraine? Hop on this plane and get over there to a bordering country and we'll send you right into the fight. And even Germany is realizing that Putin's intentions can be devastating for the whole world. So Germany, for like the first time since World War II, is actually going to increase their budget by over $100 billion. So because of these sanctions and these blocking from imports and exports, Russian economy is probably going to take a huge hit. It's already starting to take a big hit. So what is Russia doing now? What is Putin doing now? He's saying, hey, you guys want to start a war? I got nuclear powers. I can take out this country. I can take out the US. You don't want to start a war with me? A country like France came out and said, hey, yeah, you got nuclear arms? Hey, we do too, guy. So what's going on here, Putin? In a previous video, Putin did say that he looked at all the outcomes, all the different things that could happen, and he analyzed everything. Their military has analyzed everything. And so Putin thinks he can have success in this campaign. Now, worst case scenario is that Putin releases a lot of nuclear weapons and devastates Ukraine and devastates other countries. this could lead to a surprise attack from Putin's Russia onto America. This surprise attack from Russia could impact a lot of NATO nations and disable them, kind of like if we look back in history when Japan said, hey, if I immobilize the US's Navy, we can be free to take on these islands and take all this territory. It looks like Putin might have something like that up his sleeve. He also is kind of like throwing out a lot of threats, which is not cool at all. And, a lot of us seen what have happened in history. If we go back to World War I, if we go back to World War II, we see the war in Vietnam. We see, all this war and destruction and loss of innocent lives. And we're trying to learn from history as a world, but when something like this happens, it can be devastating for civilians. So, worst case scenario, all-out nuclear war, who wins? Well, honestly, no one wins. A, because you decimate other nation economies that you trade with, that you import-export with. Your country kind of gets hit too, or your country gets decimated as well. A lot of civilians lose their lives, and those are the big losers, is the civilian populations. Innocent civilians die for what? So after a nuclear aftermath, we've not seen a nuclear aftermath on this scale before, if this were to happen. So what happens? Well, you'll have a lot of nuclear radiation floating around within the atmosphere. It definitely probably would affect weather patterns. It would probably affect, the way the Earth tilts on the way the Earth is on its axis. This would definitely decimate the world population. Right now, there's around 8 billion people in the world, and you're probably going to see, you'd probably see a huge decrease in that amount. So how do you go into some of these nations and clean up the aftermath and start from scratch? I mean, the U.S. is pretty much, experienced in this, but civilians trying to reestablish a population in a nuclear radiated area are going to have difficulties. There's going to be diseases. There's going to be abnormalities. So, this could definitely bring the world, if it were to get to this level, could bring the world backwards in innovation and in technology. So we could see a huge impact if that were to happen with the world as a whole and nations globally. Okay, so what about the best case scenarios here? Well, if we take a look at some of the Russian forces that have been captured in Ukraine, they say they were only told they were going to go on a training exercise, and they ended up in Ukraine taking fire and then told, hey, they'll shoot me if I try to fall back. I'm already in the war. So a lot of these soldiers that got captured feel like they have been deceived by Putin and the officers in charge of them. What we could see here is that, and this is just going off what they were told, by the way. So what we could see here is maybe some of the officers, maybe the soldiers, they lay down their arms. Let's just say that the civilians back home, they throw a revolt. They've already been protesting. Let's say they throw a revolt and they jeopardize this whole campaign where Putin, who's already being economically sanctioned, is forced to lay down his arms and tell his troops to fall out of Ukraine. Putin gets reprimanded by the UN, gets reprimanded by the world, gets taken away for war crimes or something of the sorts, and a new leader takes over Russia, president, democratic, and Russia eventually becomes part of NATO or something, That might be a great case scenario. So guys, those are my thoughts. What's the worst case scenario that you think could happen? What is Putin really trying to do? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. And as always, be sure to learn history and curate history. Make it a great day.